the live stream. For all intents and purposes, I'm going to assume that we're both live.
I think we're live. Yeah.
So,
Message. Yeah.
a very warm welcome to Harold Underdown. I'm going to say you're first of all my friend,
Absolutely.
and and
Absolutely.
and 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 my mentor, and my personal editor for the past 5 years, with a few hiatuses or
Mhm.
Haiti. But basically, we've been working together for over 5 years.
I
So,
know.
welcome. And in the kidlit community, you're way up there. I can't think of anybody that I admire more than you, Harold. So it's a great pleasure to have you on the show. And now I have to remember that it's a show. So I'm Mel Rosenberg, and I keep forgetting what I am. I'm the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And Harold, it's a great pleasure to have you. And before I begin, I'm going to have to make a little soliloquy, or monogamy, or whatever they say. Monologue, that's the word. Yeah, I knew that. It's when we picked the day today, I didn't think about it, but today is October 7th, the second anniversary of the most horrific events for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And I just want to share um, my grief, and and to say that this program has received support of so many people, and so have I. And I guess everybody knows that I'm here in Israel, reaching out to the world, and it's important for me to continue to do what I do on a personal level, and as someone who is Jewish and lives here. And Harold, I know that this is what we should be doing, because this is my way of sharing and loving, and praying for a good world.
Mhm.
And you are such a good person. So welcome to the show. It's also the Jewish holiday of Tabernacles today, where we invite the people to our sukkahs and our homes. And so I moved to my living
Well,
room today.
wow. That's very apt, isn't it? That we're talking today for that reason. So, Mel, thank you. I mean, I have really the past 5 years I've greatly enjoyed working with you, and I'm just really um I'm honored that you're having me on and that we get to talk in a somewhat different way together. So so please, let's go ahead.
Okay, and timing is everything, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's so important for Kidlit. And next week, you're giving a timely 2 evening seminar. I think it's on the 14th of October and the 16th,
Right. Yeah.
uh, for highlights. It's more fun to actually go to highlights, but the next best thing is to attend one of your workshops. So you're going to be talking about trends in Kidlit, and I'd like you to give my community a few
Sure.
tidbits.
Sure. So the full title is Trends, Market Shifts, and Opportunities. And we chose that title because I don't just want to talk about, oh, what's up in picture books and what's down in middle grade novels, because that's often not necessarily all that useful to know. There's a lot of other things going on in publishing and in children's books in particular. And so I've broken it down to four kind of subtopics, and I'll just kind of quickly go over those with you if that's okay.
Sure.
Um, I'm gonna start by talking with people about, like how I see trends and market shifts, and how I feel writers in particular can look at them and think about whether or not it's a good idea for them to respond to them. Um, And I also want to talk about, as part of that kind of introductory bit, uh, how they can find out for themselves about what's going on in our business. Like, what are the good sources of information? How can you interpret what an editor or an agent is saying? And how can you actually there's a few resources in particular that I want to point people to that kind of help you see into the future, which to me is the most useful. So that's the first
Harold,
part.
Harold's crystal ball. So
Yeah,
first of all, I should say that you have one of the most popular and well-researched free websites on the internet for anything connected to Kidlit. The website is the Purple Crayon, right?
that's right. Yeah, the purple crayon. Yeah, thank you.
And
And I actually I used to talk about like trends and sort of business happenings there. I haven't been able to keep up with that, but that's kind of what I'm drawing from is some of that experience. Um, and then I'm going to talk about how we got where we are, because I think that's really helpful to understand what's in the market right now.
mhm.
Um, it's
And
a
Harold,
little,
before we get where we are,
yeah,
I'm gonna jump in here at the
sure.
first. So here's the thing. Who is your main audience? These
Oh,
are
okay.
people.
Right, right. That so yes, obviously I'm assuming maybe not everybody who listens to your broadcast would be in this group, but I'm assuming I'm talking to children's book writers. Everybody from someone who's just getting started today to someone who's been working in the business for decades. It's really a big overview, so it's not just targeted at like one particular kind of writer. It's everyone from beginner to the experienced. It's everyone from picture book writers to young adult.
Okay, wonderful. I'm guessing that here, my community is mostly authors who are trying to break in, or authors who have broken in, and also a lot of people, hundreds and thousands of people who are interested in children's literature in general. But
Mhm.
here's the thing: for people who are trying to break in, is this helpful? And the reason is, Harold, you are interviewee uh, about number 199, and one of
Okay.
the you know we both identify as being Jewish people, and one of the strange things about Judaism is that it says that we can do what we like, but God knows what we're going to do. And there's this. This is
Mhm.
a kind of a strange metaphor for those of us who are not particularly religious. I never really understood it. I mean, if God knows what you're going to do, then you can still have the choice to do it or not. It's a bit strange. And the analogy here in children's literature is that we tell people, and people have said this often on this
Mhm.
on this podcast. Um, you should write to the marketplace, and then they said,
Mhm.
no, you should write from your heart, but you should write for the marketplace.
Mhm.
A few words on this quandary here.
I mean that's a point that I'm kind of directly going to address during my workshop because it's so important. And I mean, for me, what it comes down to is it's both. It's you need to know what's going on. You can't just go off and write in isolation in your attic, and not pay any attention to what's going on in children's books, in publishing, in the world, right? You need to pay attention, but all of that goes into the hopper. And what's really important, and I don't think I'm giving away too much of the workshop to say this, is that
Go ahead, give away, Harold, give away.
I feel really strongly that you need to write what only you can write, that makes, you know, that is the expression of you as an individual, um, that is different from everybody else. And that is what is going to stand out. And And
Harold, sorry, I want to remind you of something that happened to us.
Mhm.
It, I'm now blessed with book deals. A lot of the credit goes to you. We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Mhm.
But and I have wonderful agents. But in the day before I had agents, when I was floundering and flopping
Right,
around, I once read that an agent was interested in a biography about Carole King.
right.
And you and I spent about 6 months writing this bio,
Yeah,
and I sent it to the agent, and she didn't diss it, she didn't reject it, she didn't answer me.
yeah,
So sometimes it's not that healthy to
right.
see something and then say, "Oh, the world needs now,"
Yeah,
a book
yeah.
about
I
purple
think
penguins.
that's definitely something I'll be addressing, that when you see someone asking for something very specific, unless it happens that you've already written it, taking the time to write it for them, I mean, there's a small chance that something good might happen, but it's interesting. Yours is not the only story like this, right? Like people experience this all the time. So yeah, it's really a case of being more generally aware of what's going on. Um,
Okay, so I stopped you. So go on to the other topics that we're
so
going to address.
so I'm so I am going to talk about the history of maybe the last 70 years. There's some really kind of like um, key things that have happened, some changes, and they've created the market that we're in today. And if you don't fully know that, you kind of you're not operating with the knowledge that you need.
Harold,
And
give us a freebie example here.
so as a freebie example, um, and I think a lot of people know this story. Before the 1960s, young adult books didn't exist as a category, right? Um, Children's books just went from actually they were all kind of undifferentiated. We didn't really fully distinguish chapter books from middle grade novels from young adult, and all the books that were novels for children were differentiated by who they were intended for, but there weren't categories that differentiated them. And what happened in the 1960s and into the 1970s is that librarians were started noticing some books being written by people like Judy Blume that were for teenagers, very specifically, not for 12-year-olds. And they said, "Oh, we're going to start a new section of the library. We're going to call it young adult." So that happened then, but it's had consequences that continue to flow forward to today. And there are other things like that. Um, that then will lead me on my second evening to talking about the trends. But, you know, I'm also going to be, again, providing context of like, what does it mean to say um, middle grade novels are slumping, which is something people have been talking about now for a few years, actually. And I have some thoughts about, what's really going on and why that is. Um, and then I'll wrap up looking at the even wider picture of trends that are actually coming into children's books from outside that are affecting our business.
Also
Um,
outside North America.
um, some of these are global changes. Some of them are American, yeah. But
I, I,
I'm going to be
I'm
talking about technology, for example, and technology and the impact that it's had on publishing over the past 30 or 40 years. Like, when I started in publishing, we didn't have personal computers, right? Forget about the internet. We didn't have personal computers. And that's had an impact on publishing around the entire world. Yeah.
okay. I think it's important. Also on the show, I try and interview publishers from abroad and
Mhm.
artists
Yeah.
and authors because I do think it's different, and sometimes we have to learn
Sure.
from
Absolutely. Yeah.
other
Um,
countries as well.
and I should mention, I am going to be getting into AI, and I have some strong opinions about that, and I will say no more.
Okay, and I'm just going to say that you surprised me last week in an argument with my wife, which you took her side. So yeah, I will be eager to learn what you have to say about AI. So again, just going to shout out that it's always wonderful to hear Harold. I get to hear you every week, but for the rest of the world, it's only $59 or something, which is peanuts. And I highly recommend that everybody attend your workshop. Again, highlights October 14th, and we'll put a little link. And then now we're done with the advertising.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thanks, Mel.
so let's talk about me and you as a test case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, why don't you start? Do you remember how we met? Because I do.
Honestly, I don't. I'm really bad about this kind of thing. So you should say.
Okay, so I've always, ever since I took a serious interest about 10 or 11 years ago, I mean, your name pops up everywhere. And then I saw that we were both going to a children's book meeting in Ottawa, Canada,
Oh,
which
right. Okay.
where I grew up, and I wanted to visit. Haven't been back in decades. And you were giving us a one of the main talks, and I wrote to you. I said, Harold, wow, let's meet up in Ottawa. Wow, and let's have a little coffee or something. And you were
Yeah.
very kind. You're always very kind. And then, of course, something named COVID hit, and the
Yeah. That
meeting
was
was.
the first spring of the pandemic, right?
And then I said, okay, we have this free publishing ebook website, Our Books, and I thought, okay, I would enlist you as an advisor for Our Books,
Mhm.
which you were for a bit. And then I said, oh, Harold is so good. This advice is so good. I need it. Why share it with the world? I need this stuff. And that is when
Right. Right.
we started working together. And just a few words. I don't know whether you still work this way with other people, but the deal was, 5 hours of your time, and you send payment in advance. And to be frank, I had to give myself an excuse to study with you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I gave myself two excuses. First of
Okay.
all, I said I would use my parents' inheritance
Hmm.
for this, because I'm sure that they're both deceased, but they would be very happy that I'm writing children's books. It was something that, my late mom was a kindergarten teacher, a very revered kindergarten teacher in Ottawa, and my father read me children's books, and I think they would be happy that some of this money was going to further my education. And the second thing was, it was Harold. It was either you or a psychologist. I said, okay, psychologist. So we started to work together. Now it's your turn to say something.
Okay. So that's really interesting, Mal. And what I really treasure about what we do is it's honestly it's completely different about, well, not completely different, but it's quite different from the way I work together with any other client. And that's really to your credit because you wanted to do that. And what we do, which is frankly, it's unusual, is
Well, hold on, Harold. First of all, say what you
yeah.
do with other people.
Well, my usual routine as a freelance or consulting editor is people contact me, we work out an agreement to work on a particular manuscript, or maybe a set of manuscripts, and I give them feedback in writing, either on the manuscript itself or in a separate letter or both. And maybe at the end of it, I'll have a conversation to kind of, you know, wrap things up and help and answer questions and so on. But my usual routine is I'm working with people in the way that I did always as an editor in-house. I'm giving them written feedback, and we're working from there. And what we evolved together, and this was again mainly because you were sort of wanting to go in that direction, was we would do essentially close readings of your manuscripts. I'd actually we'd be together on screen on Zoom, and I would read, and I still do this, I would read your manuscript, the latest draft, out loud, possibly stopping to make comments, and then at the end of it, having a further conversation. And this was really, this was, I think, really useful for you, not only because I was making comments, but because you were hearing someone else reading it. and it was,
which we always recommend this, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Read your manuscripts. But what better thing is to get Harold Underdown to read your manuscripts? And what I discovered over the years, Harold, is that I've known this since our first interview. This is our third, that you are a past thespian. You liked acting, and you read the stories with gusto, and sometimes you pick the characters that you're going to recite. Oh, I'm going to be the walrus this time. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that happens there is that my usual editorial process kind of plays out in real time. And what I mean by my editorial process is, and I think all editors really go through this, we often talk about editing and criticism of literature as something that happens up in the intellect, right? That it's something we think about, and we look at what's on the page and we analyze it and we figure out what's wrong with it. And I think that short circuits what's really happening, which is that anyone, even the driest academic, when they're first reading something, they are responding to it. They are making meaning between themselves and the text. And they're bringing their past history, their personal experiences, their feelings, and they're interacting with what's in front of them. And what happens for an editor is, as you read through something, you're noticing your reactions, and then the second part kicks in, like, okay, why am I reacting like this? Maybe something's funny, and you're laughing at it, and that's like, oh, that's a joke which the author landed. That's good, but also, especially in an early draft of a manuscript, there'll be places where I'll feel confused or disappointed or something else. And then again, I have to stop and think, well, what's going on here? Why am I responding in this way? And that's what it's all about, right? Because what you have to do with a manuscript is you have to read it. And to the extent that it works for the reader, who in this case is an editor, your goal is that it's also going to work for another reader.
Okay, I want to qualify this, Harold, because we're talking here about picture books.
Sure.
And picture books are a play. Picture books are read aloud. And I, to be frank, I didn't feel it would be fun any other way.
Right.
I'm paying you money, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And at the beginning, I had no inkling whether I would be traditionally published, whether I would find agents. And I told you two things. Now, maybe I told you one thing. Harold, just make me the best writer that I can be. But of course, like everybody else, I was hoping that this would also help me find an agent and a book deal, which it did. But I was floundering for, let's say, 3 out of the past 5 years.
Right.
But when you started reading the stories to me, I'm sitting and I'm typing notes and I'm fixing things. And I say, oh, no, this doesn't sound right. And I'm making notes. And I also see your facial expressions. And I can see whether you're, and by the tone, whether you're getting into the story. And I say, okay.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, because they're picture books, it's practical to do this kind of approach. I would not do this with someone who'd written a middle grade novel. Unless there's a particular scene or two or three that we want to really like zoom in on. But yeah, you can't do this practically for longer works.
Okay. Now I want to ask you some other questions, Harold.
Mhm.
So one of the things you didn't do, and you didn't do this because you're Harold. In other words, you didn't phone up your friend Lucy and
Right.
say, "Hey, I have a student named Mel. Will you take a look at his stuff?"
Mhm.
That's not how you work.
It's also not how it works, right? Like that whole idea, which I think a lot of people have, that referrals are what drive acquisitions or agent connections. In my experience, that's just not true, right? Um, for a lot of different reasons. One of them is simply that, I might have felt we had developed a manuscript that was wonderful. Um, but the people I know might not have been the right people for it, right? That a connection isn't valuable if it's not the right connection.
Absolutely. But here's another thing: the manuscript that got us going.
Hmm.
And I should also shout out to Mike Malbrough, who worked on this with me before I met you. Emily saw a door.
Hmm.
In its published form, it was a
Hmm.
lot better than what we had. And that was because it went through two publishers who challenged me, meaning
Right.
us, to improve the manuscript in two separate parts of it.
Hmm.
And it also it bothers me because it bothers me in a kind of a good way. Um, is your job as an editor um, to see a manuscript and say, okay, it's not perfect,
Hmm.
it needs fixing, but there is huge potential there, when you don't know how the author is going to fix it?
That's not necessarily the way that I would look at it. Um, with Emily, certainly from the beginning. And Emily, by the way, and you haven't said this, and I'm going to say it for you. Emily saw Doors coming out in the U.S. from, is it Random House Studio? Is the
Mhm.
imprint? Yeah, in February, with wonderful illustrations, and people should be looking for it. Um, so that's your advertisement.
Thanks.
Um, and honestly, Emily was, when I first saw it, conceptually, it was 90% of what it ended up being. You had it. You had the concept. It was the very strong concept of Emily knocking at various doors and being turned away, and what she ended up doing. And we tinkered with it. We really did, right?
And
And
endlessly.
almost endlessly. And and eventually, it got to the point where we felt comfortable, and you were able uh, to sell it to a publisher in Israel, and
That's right.
that's really, where it started.
So what's
Um,
that? Well, let's shout out to Yotam and Meira at
yes.
Talmai, who loved Emily, and Arit Magda, who made the wonderful illustrations. Um, but I'm thinking that there's always okay. So let's say that somebody gives you a manuscript, and you love the manuscript. You still don't know what it's going to look like in the end.
Right.
You
Right.
don't know with the final editing, but mainly you don't know how the artwork is going to play out.
This is
You-
true. Yeah. Yeah. I guess when I was working with you, and I think this is true more generally as well, um, I I saw a number of manuscripts in different states, right? Like that some of them were early drafts, some of them were ones you've been working on more, they were more polished. And and for me, I'm going to work with a client on something um, if I see promise in it. If there's something there that I think could get to the point where someone would want to publish it. And that could be something fairly small. It could be a kernel. It could be the entire concept of the story. The manuscript could have some major flaws in it or not. Um, and I do remember when we were initially working together that there were manuscripts that I was less interested in, and I let you know that. And I think that's part of the process as well, especially with picture books, where for a picture book writer, one of the things you have to do, it's not just, like revise every manuscript until it's perfect. Part of the process for a picture book writer, and I've seen this with a number of different writers, is learning how to identify the ones that are worth going all the way with. And when to go forward with something and when to set it aside. And that's one of the things that we did.
So indeed, and there was a post this week, I think Vicky Weber, about the manuscript graveyard of picture book authors. We certainly have a huge graveyard. But here's the thing. Sometimes, and this is another thing that I love about you, is that there's manuscripts that, let's say, you don't like, but you don't say, put this in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on the side. And what I know is that in order to get your eventual seal of Harold Underdown approval, I'm just going to have to work much harder on that manuscript if I want it to shine.
That's true. Yeah.
There's some manuscripts that aren't me, and I can put them aside. And there's some that are me, like
Mm-hmm.
Emily. And
Mm-hmm.
these are the ones that I have to work on
Yeah. Yeah.
with all
And
my OCD in place.
yeah, and I could just break in. I mean, I think that's something that's also really important for a writer is you have to know or learn, what are the things that you care about as a writer? What is it that you most want to write about? What is it that you most want to express? And hold on to that because that's what keeps you going.
Absolutely. And here's another thing that I want to commend you. Because our sessions are so much fun, you don't always come and say, "Oh, Mel, I love this one and I love that one." Usually, it's quite the opposite. This one needs work, and this one needs a lot of work. Right, and I'll be coming in. I'll say, "Oh, Harold's going to love this." Draft number 32. And sometimes you do, but usually there's more work to be done. And then I say, "Oh, shit!" But then I say, "Okay, that's what this game is all about." And because you've made it so much fun, I look forward to our Sunday meetings, and it also gives me a lighthouse. So I know that at the end of the weekend, I have to
Mhm.
report to you, and if we don't have stuff to work on, we're not going to have a fun session.
That's right. And there's a lesson there for other writers. I mean, we have weekly we have weekly sessions most of the time. And what that does also is, and you've talked about this, it gives you accountability that you have a deadline. You have a deadline every week of something ready for our meeting.
Yeah, I
And
have to impress Harold on Sundays. That's my job.
exactly. And for other writers who aren't necessarily in a relationship with an editorial mentor like me, there's critique groups, there's critique partners, there's writing buddies, and that's something I think, writers should definitely look for is giving themselves a little bit of structure, not necessarily like a weekly deadline, but, maybe monthly or whatever works for them so that there's something they're writing towards and that helps them keep going because it's hard sometimes.
It's very hard. Harold, I have critique buddies and I have critique group and so on, and I'm a big favor, a big fan of that approach as well. But there's nothing like having your own editor whom you can trust, and most of the time, I trust you and agree with you. And once in a blue moon, I say, Harold, sorry, that sentence stays. Sorry.
Right. Well, you're the writer, Mel.
E- Exactly. exactly. And we should say that since Emily, we've sold two other books, I hope, and hopefully we'll be able to sell more. So this brings me now to the subject we've discussed time and time again,
Mhm.
which is why do it? You know, Stephen Fraser talked about the passion of writing children's books, but it's more of a Christian passion on the cross because it's at the beginning you don't have anything, you just get rejections. I was rejected hundreds of times, and you still have to have fun. It
Mhm.
still has to be itchy scratchy.
Mhm.
So my advice, the reason I love working with you and I never want to stop working with you, is not only because you make me a better author and sometimes a better human being, but I have fun working with you. If anybody could see my face during our sessions, I'm smiling 95% of the time. And I think that the message that I would give to
Hey,
aspiring authors,
Mel, I lost you after you not only make me better.
no, that's okay. I just said some nice things about you, Harold. But but I really believe that you have to have fun doing this because it can take, in my case, it took almost 10 years.
Right.
And without some luck,
Hmm.
and you talked about Magia, without having wonderful illustrators, when you do get a publishing deal, um, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And you have to feel comfortable spending your days and nights doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's necessarily fun, but you certainly have to find satisfaction and a kind of deep-seated um uh pleasure in the craft of, figuring things out and having an idea, taking that idea, developing it, seeing that there are problems, working on them, finding possible solutions. That if that process is satisfying, then that's going to keep you going.
And we have this on occasion. You'll be working on the story, and it'll be and either you or us say, "Oh, maybe there should be a carpenter with the walrus," and you'll say, "Oh,
That's right. It's great when that happens. Um,
these are
that
the wonderful moments." Harold, what haven't I asked you?
um Honestly, I think you've asked me about the workshop. You've asked me about my editorial process. Um, I don't know. Do you want to ask me about what's going on in publishing right now? We could talk about that, or is that too depressing?
No, I will say this. No matter how depressing you make people, this has been my story since I went to SCBWI at the beginning of 2016, right?
Mhm.
It's hard to break in. It's 1 in 1,000. It's 1 in 3,000. You'll never get published. You'll never get published. You're old and you're bald and you're a guy and you're from Israel. Uh, Nobody's going to ever look in your direction. And it's it's very depressing if you look at the stats.
Mhm. Right.
Now I'm going to let you jump in.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's always been really hard, right? I mean, and we talk about the odds, and you can kind of like construct them and say, it's 1,000 to 1 against me, it's 10,000 to 1 against me. Um, but and this is something I've been saying for a long time. When it comes down to it, what you're hoping for, and it doesn't always happen, right? What you're hoping for is that your one story, picture book story, an early reader story, a chapter book story, a middle grade novel or YA novel, a piece of nonfiction for whatever age group. Um, what you're hoping for is that will make a connection with an agent and an editor, or just directly with an editor. And when that happens, the odds are completely irrelevant. because it's just you, your manuscript, and that person. And if it's the right thing for them, and they have, I mean, and this is an if too, right? They have the pull to get it through the acquisition process, then it happens. So I always tell people, don't look at the odds, don't count yourself out, because if you keep working at it, if you're as long again as you're finding enjoyment in the process, if you keep working at it, opportunities appear, connections happen, real connections happen, and luck happens, as you said. But luck to happen kind of only that's only going to work if you're ready for it, right? And
Yeah.
you were ready for it.
No, but Harold, you also have to bust down doors and you have to be there. And, of the 198 previous people that I've interviewed, we talked about this. Very few find their deals through the slush pile. It happens.
Mhm.
They beat the odds. They enter contests. They go to meetings. They um, talk to editors and talk to agents, and they try to be nice, and they get involved in the community.
Mhm.
They do podcasts, which is how I made my luck happen, right, through these podcasts. Um,
Mhm.
and while you were talking about the odds, I have another take on this,
Mhm.
because the word odd can mean several things, right? It's the odds, but it's also
Sure.
being odd, like
Mhm.
the odd manuscript. So you really have to find your oddness, because the 1 in 1,000, the 1 in 3,000, there's always a story. It's
Yeah.
you know it's either the manuscript is this, or the author is this, or you went to a meeting, or to beat the odds, you need to be odd.
I mean, I will say that there's another perspective on that I discovered when I was researching for a different workshop about submissions. And I talked to a bunch of agents, and most of them told me that the bulk of their clients came into them through traditional querying of manuscripts. Um, so I think, there's no one path, right? For you, you made your own very unique, odd path. And there are a lot of other people who can say the same. But for people who are not able to do that because it's not their personalities or whatever, um, other ways can work too. And I think it's just really interesting that every person has their own path, and there's no single path that has been the same, even for people who have
Mhm.
been querying in a traditional way. Once you start talking to them,
Mhm.
you find out that there's lots of variations on that, and different ways that it plays out. So,
Okay, Harold, but I'm going to agree with you, but I also want to tweak this a little bit, because I have interviewed many agents over the past years and met a few,
mhm,
and I have my wonderful agents, Liza Fleissing and Ginger
right,
Harris in New York. And by the way, agents are really nice people. Um,
absolutely.
and and they are completely misunderstood, but that's another subject.
Yes.
But when they say to you that they found someone through the slush pile, it's
Yeah.
somebody who wrote, I saw your presentation, on so on. We met at this and this. Uh, Usually there is some personal thing in the hook, book, schmuck, duck, and nook,
Yeah.
that somehow connects them, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
I mean, that's absolutely true. You have to do your homework. There's an enormous difference between sending out 14 queries to 14 agents whose names you found in the SCBWI Essential Guide, and that's really all you know about them, and sending out a query to someone who, you've heard them speak at a conference, you've read their interview. Yeah, that absolutely. You need to
there
do that
has
kind
to
of,
be, there has to be, there doesn't have to be, but there should be
it helps.
something that
Yeah.
brings you closer. Also, something I was never able to do, winning contests, winning. Vivian Kirkfield has the 50 precious words, and there's so many different other contests you can enter. I never won,
Mhm.
so that was never an in for me. But other people who won contests found
Yeah.
agents,
Yeah.
and people who had their manuscripts looked at a meeting found agents,
Hmm.
and yes, there are some examples of people who just wrote in with a brilliant, eternal piece of art, and were picked up that way. But those are really the odd men and ladies out.
Yeah.
Um, Harold, listen, this is it's a joy speaking to you. It's been 5 wonderful years working with you, and I mean, did you ever? So this is the last question. When we
Okay.
were working together, and I didn't have an agent, I didn't
Mhm.
have a book deal, and I was suffering and floundering, and there was Corona and stuff going on
Yeah.
here in Israel, and health issues and whatever.
Yeah.
Did you ever say to yourself, "This poor guy, he's never going to have a book deal"?
I, you know, I don't, well, I'm not going to say I would never say that about someone. I certainly didn't say it about you. And the reason is, I think I know from experience, I've started working with people at different points in their journeys, and it's very hard. I would say it's impossible to predict, you know, this person who's right here right now, they're going to make it versus this person who's right over here right now is not, because that's just a snapshot. And where they're going, that's up to them. So with you,
Hey, yes,
I was happy to keep working with you because I could see you were learning, right? And your writing was improving and your self-editing skills were improving, and they've continued to improve. And your knowledge of the process and of our business has grown. So,
yeah, but without that chance phone call to your Yotam, it would never have happened. Um,
right.
and this
Luck is
is
part of it, but you were ready for that luck, Mel.
You have to be ready for the luck. You have to be ready for the luck. You have to enjoy what you're doing. You have to suffer. You have to be prepared to persevere during
Yep.
very difficult times, which I think I was. That was to my advantage. And you have to try and be nice to people. And you have to remember that it's a community, but the more that you give to the community, the more you're going to get back. And Harold, you are one of the people who gives the most to the community in so many ways. Your website and your contribution to Kidlit 411. And I can tell you that, and I'll just tell people, one of the great things working with you is that, like I pay you in advance, but you're so careful. It's not like if we talk for 35 minutes, you will write in your book 28 minutes because we talked for 7 minutes about about the weather, which always going to talk about snow with Harold Underdown. So a real mensch, and I, I expect now you'll be in, inundated with people who want to work with you, and that's the way it should be. In the meantime, run out and grab a ticket to Harold's presentation, and just my last advice is it's like important to know these trends. It's important to know what's happening, but
Yeah,
the end of the way, you have to trust your kishkas.
that's right. That's absolutely right, Mel. And you have done that. You have done that.
And I've trusted you, Harold, and that has been to my great benefit. So, everybody, I'm Mel Rosenberg, the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And I have been hosting the wonderful, amazing editor, Harold Underdown, who is celebrating. We're celebrating 5 years together, and you're celebrating next week's presentation for highlights on trends in children's literature, et cetera, et cetera. Give the whole title, Harold.
The official title is publishing trends, market shifts, and opportunities.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect me to remember all of that.
No.
I can't remember my own name. Everybody have a wonderful week, and we are in a very tenuous situation here in the Middle East, hoping for our hostages back and for peace finally, and to smile a lot more than we have been. Harold, it's been a real joy. Everybody take care.
Mel, thanks for having me.
It was a great privilege and pleasure, Harold.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.